All right, sorry about that. I really don't know what happened there. Let me pop this back up, and we should be 100% good to go. So, anyways, finally, let's get this thing started. I appreciate you, Christopher Flamini, for all the help there. Glad one link is up and running and not two, because that'd be problematic. All right, so let me lower my chair a little bit of headroom. There we go. All right, let's get right into it. Question number 1. This is a weird question. It was worded very, very weird. Anonymous dude. So I don't know if you did something shady with, against your homeboy there, but the question goes, question, I'm not sure how to feel about UFC 249 passing by. Forgive my example. It's like when your best friend's crush kissed you in high school. It feels kind of cool at first, but you're not certain if that should have happened. Is it odd to feel that way about UFC 249? Thanks. How's the dog? Anonymous dude, come on, man. What's going on here? What's happening? You're better than that. Sounds. Anyways, yeah. Don't do that to your homie. But I do think, although the question was a little bit strange, I would say that there is something to it as far as watching the fights, enjoying the fights, and also knowing that it's a global pandemic. To the few people that weren't aware that UFC was going down, I was talking to them. They're like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? This and that. Like, not that I'm gonna go out or anything like that. But what's going on? Anything new? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm working. There's fights this weekend, and then people would be like surprised. They'd be like, oh really? There's fights this weekend? I thought, how is that even happening? If like bars are not even open, this and that. Like, how is sports? I thought sports was like phase 4 of the whole reopening thing. And I'm like, nope, yep, there's fights happening. And when Jacare tested positive for COVID-19 on Friday night, I'm not going to lie, I did feel weird about the event going on. Not necessarily, I didn't think it should have been canceled after that because, look, we live in a pandemic. People are going to test positive. I'm glad that there's testing going on to catch the people that are positive, to remove them from the population, and therefore avoid any further infections. However, there was a video, and I made an article on this on MMAJunkie.com that was pretty clear, where Jacare was hanging out with Fabricio Werdum, Charles Rosa, and it looks like there was other people there, and he was pretty close. And yes, he was wearing gloves and masks, but we know that doesn't necessarily stop the spread of COVID. It helps. It's a recommendation. We should do it. It definitely reduces it, but that doesn't mean because you have a mask, you're not going to spread the virus. It could very well happen. So that was my concern. My concern is like, well, these guys are going to fight in a little bit. The guys that were there should be retested. If they test clean, they should be able to compete. If not, the other fights should go on. I don't think the event should be canceled, but to be 100% sure that there are no further infections, those people should be contained, or at least done testing on so we know whether they're good or not to compete. That was non-existent. Apparently, that was the last test. So that was my issue. But not gonna lie, like the fight went on. The fights were very, very good. It looks like everything was quite, up to regulations, and it seems everyone's safe. Again, we would only know. People are saying like, oh, this is a home run for the UFC. So far, it looks like it. But let's just wait and see a week or two from now, because we know that the symptoms can take up to 2 weeks to actually show up. So we don't know exactly. So it's too early to celebrate. But I will say this. I think the UFC, from what I heard from my colleague John Morgan and other people, I do feel like the UFC implemented a rigid and a good protocol in place. Obviously, there was mistakes made, obviously, by that video with Fabricio Werdum in it. But, mistakes are going to happen. I hope this is a lesson for the UFC, and that the next event, social distancing is a lot more taken seriously, right? I think they should even go as far as like going to walkie-talkies and I'm talking about the staff down there and being like, all right, one fighter is going to face them off. Then get those guys out of there, then bring the other ones. I don't think they should be standing in a line. I really do think keeping that distance 6 feet apart and all that should be kept in mind. As far as that, but aside from that, I think everything else was up to par. And again, it's a lesson learned. So I hope moving forward for the events, everything's a lot more, there's more precautions as far as the social distancing. But I'm glad there's tests going on. I'm glad that everybody involved has protective gear. I'm glad that, there's not that many people involved. It seems they're running operations at a bare minimum as far as personnel goes, right? They don't have any, I don't want to say non-essential staff or unnecessary staff, but it seems everybody that's there has a purpose. And they're just doing, it's kind of like the bare minimum to run a fight week, right? They're not adding extra personnel just to jazz things up. No, they just have enough personnel to run the event, and that's it. So, yeah. But other than that, I think it was a good moment for the UFC, and I hope, again, as I said before, I never advocated for this event to be canceled. I just think that precautions need to be taken, and look, there's going to be mistakes along the road, and there clearly was. And what is my dog doing? And we just have to learn from them. And it seems everything's fine. So, again, I'm for the fights, and I'm glad they're happening. But yes, to answer your question, it did feel a little bit weird because you're like, oh, I don't know if this should be going on or not. But yeah, I think I think the UFC did a good job so far. Oh, and how's my dog? My dog is doing something here. I don't even know what he's doing. Hachiko, ven, vente, ven, ven. All right, I'll show you guys. You see his tail right here? Where's it? Hach, ven, ven. All right. Say something, Hutch. All right. But yeah, he's been good, man. Apart from he bit my Bluetooth speaker a little bit. It still works, but it's chewed down. So just aesthetic issues. But as far as the actual mechanics of it, they're still all good. And he's a very good dog. I mean, he's a puppy, and he hasn't really done anything bad as far as like breaking anything. That's like the worst thing he's done. Other than that, he's been a pretty good dog and pretty chill. You just got to keep an eye on him because, again, everything's so new to him. Anyways, but yeah, he's good. Question number 2. This is by Mystic Mac on Twitter. He asks, many people were saying that Khabib versus Tony fight would determine the best 155er of this generation and possibly of all time. Now that Gaethje defeated Tony, if he beats Khabib, assuming they fight next, would we have to consider him the greatest? So, like I said on my last live Q&A, remember, there's a difference between greatness and being the best, right? The best fighter of all time is not necessarily the greatest of the fighter of all time, and vice versa. However, there is a correlation between the two. I think, obviously, you got to be pretty damn good, the best, if not close to the best, to be the greatest. But just because you're the best, that doesn't necessarily mean you're the greatest, and vice versa. Why? Because greatness is measured by achievement, whereas best is measured by pure skill. So, so he would not be the greatest. His road to greatness would be just getting started. I mean, think about it. He's just on a 4-fight win streak compared to Khabib's unbeaten record of being like 28-0, and Tony Ferguson being 12-0, right, on that incredible run. They've achieved greater things than Gaethje, even with Gaethje defeating both. Let's say if he were to get past Khabib, of course. But man, he'd be pretty close to it. I mean, it definitely helps to have wins over the guys that are considered greater than you. And certainly he would be on his way. For one, he would have the title. He would be the champion. And two, we would assume that he would start defending the belt and likely have success. I mean, if you get past Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov, those are the two toughest tests in the division. Good luck beating that guy. You know what I'm saying? So to answer your question, he wouldn't be the greatest, but you would certainly consider him the best at this time because he's the champion. He's the man with the belt. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But yes, certainly it helps this case. But I do think longevity in the sport, title defenses, having success across weight classes, all that boosts his greatness. So yeah, I mean, Gaethje would just be kind of getting started. I mean, beating Ferguson and Khabib is a hell of a good start. Hey, just as I say, he's been such a good dog. He's like chewing on my shoe. First time he ever does this. No. The good thing is that he understands no. So if I say no, he chills out. All right. Well, question number 3 by Michael Terrell. Did Francis' stock actually improve after this fight? Yes, he won, but we already knew his power and his technique is being widely criticized by professionals. Is he any closer to a title shot than before this fight? So, a couple questions within this question. Just making sure he doesn't destroy my running shoes. Did Francis' stock actually improve after this fight? 100%. I mean, it's another win. It's another first-round knockout. It's another first-round knockout over a dangerous striker in a huge stage. We know what the pay-per-view numbers seem to be for that card, which were around 700,000, which is a home run. So, again, he got a lot more exposure. So yes, your stock has to go up. Again, but the question here is, how much can your stock be worth within the current climate? Like, who's buying, right? Like, are you going to get the title shot? That's the question. And we know there are other factors in place that will halt them from that title shot. But I mean, it has to help. And as far as your second question, which is he getting any closer to a title shot than before the fight? Of course. I mean, if you look at the guy that he knocked out, Jairzinho Rosenstruck, he was a man, or he's a man that's very, very active. I mean, within a calendar year, he racked up 4 knockouts within the UFC, quickly becoming a title contender, from joining the UFC to becoming a title contender real quick. So if Ngannou would have stayed on the sidelines and be like, you know what, I've done enough with my 3 KOs. I'm good. I don't need to fight. I'm getting the next shot. I'll get the winner of Stipe and Cormier. Jairzinho Rosenstruck could have easily been the guy's like, I'm going to stay active. And he could have been fighting all the top contenders and then made a case to actually skip Francis Ngannou. So he knocked out the only guy that could have possibly skipped him in this whole equation. So that is absolutely huge. At this point in time, within the heavyweight division, there's nobody, no other contender. Obviously, I'm not counting Daniel Cormier right now. I'm assuming he's already getting the next crack at the champion. Francis Ngannou's it. He's the man. There's nobody that comes close. The only person that came close was Jairzinho Rosenstruck. 4-0, 4 quick wins, unbeaten, fresh face as well. That helps. So yeah, it's a huge win for Ngannou. Unfortunately for him, it's still very murky, the title picture, with 1, a trilogy that's still pending, and 2, a champion that might take a while to actually make that trilogy happen. So it could be a good while for Ngannou to get the shot. The good thing about this win is that, as I said, there's nobody else contending for that next shot. So he can actually, at this point, something he couldn't do before, or he could have done, but there would have been some risk. Right now, he can actually sit back and be like, I'm good. I can actually wait for this. The UFC will give me the next shot. Plus, holy shit, dude, that knockout is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And, you do stuff like that, the UFC loves highlight reels. So if you look at just Instagram or just social media, some of the most retweet and shared videos are highlights of MMA. Why? Because they're so much crazy shit can happen in just a few seconds. And Ngannou definitely, powers that up. So, I'm not saying a highlight reel gets you necessarily a title shot, but certainly helps, especially for marketing and all that. So, yeah, Ngannou's the man right now. And yeah, this is a huge win for him. Again, might not get him the title shot, but I think it guarantees that he's next at the very least. Or if they're going to do something where, Stipe is going to sit out and they're going to do an interim title, he's 100% within that equation. You can't, you can't have an interim title right now without Francis Ngannou. So very, very big win for him. By the way, I forgot to mention this at the start. I probably should have, but the technical issues threw me off. I got a lot of good feedback on having Shane Burgos for the pre and post fight coverage of the card. And like I told you guys earlier, like in earlier videos, this whole experience is going to improve again, from the equipment, to the software that I got to stream, right? So different things that I'm going to do. So that's one of them. And, I really enjoyed talking to Shane. I really do think he is a threat at 145 pounds. Plus, he's a bright mind, and dude, he watches all the fights. He's a huge fan of the sport, so he's very well informed, and he's very articulate, and always has good insight into the sport. So I look forward to collaborating and doing other stuff with him as far as content goes here on my YouTube channel. So yeah, shouts out to Shane Burgos for joining me, and I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed breaking down the action with him. So yeah. Anyways, I believe we're on question number 4, right? Yes, no, maybe. Let me check number 3. All right, yeah, totally. Good talk. All right, question number 4 by the Seaside. Shouts out to the Seaside. Most surprising thing about UFC 249. Most surprising thing about UFC 249. Let me pull out the card here. Shit. What's the most surprising thing? I don't know. I feel like everything for the most part was expected. I feel like the few upsets that we did witness, they weren't huge upsets. Like those underdogs were very much alive. It was almost a split. Like, as I said, in the preview video with Shane, when we were breaking down the Ferguson Gaethje fight, we were like, yeah, I mean, it's rightfully so. Ferguson should be the favorite, but I mean, you'd be crazy to think that that Justin Gaethje can't win this fight. So yeah. I mean, Dominic Cruz losing to Cejudo, I mean, that was maybe not expected, certainly not that fashion, because Dominic has never been finished, but it was definitely a possibility that it was very likely. I'm trying to think of other outcomes. I think the most surprising thing was 2 things. Was one, Alexei Oleinik defeating Fabricio Werdum. I know there was a lot of questions about Werdum, given the fact that he had been on like a 2-year layoff because of USADA. I had him fight in a good while. First fight back, not only first fight back, but under these conditions within the pandemic, which we know are not ideal to prepare for a fight. I mean, I think every single fighter, there was no fighter that said, oh, I had a better than normal training camp or a normal training camp. Everyone was like, yeah, I came close, or I was kind of far off, but I did what I could, type attitude. But so it was like a lot of bad circumstances for Fabricio Werdum, the layoff, the pandemic, and Oleinik is tough as hell. So but at the same time, former champion, he's achieved so much that you think that he could handle somebody of the caliber of Oleinik. So I was actually very surprised to see Oleinik beat him, especially on the feet, because Werdum's Muay Thai is so good, and he was taking it to him on the feet. So that was very surprising. Another surprising thing, maybe not the result so much, but the way it went down, was Bryce Mitchell defeating Charles Rosa. Charles Rosa is legit, very skilled fighter, jiu-jitsu black belt, great grappler. I actually saw him come up in the regional circuit. He used to fight for this promotion in South Florida. When I was coming up as a media member, I would cover a lot of local promotions, and there was this promotion called CFA. CFA ended up going under. They no longer exist. I believe, last thing I saw from them, they were selling like their cage on like Facebook or something like that. But anyways, they actually had some pretty high profile fights. Sean Soriano, former UFC fighter, came out of there. Luis Baum Palomino, former World Series of Fighter, fought there as well. Who else fought there? Anthony Johnson might have fought there. Big Sean McCorkle. I'm trying to think of others, but certainly it was one of the best regional promotions out there as far as South Florida goes. And anyways, I saw him come up. He had a few fights there, if I'm not mistaken, right? He's a very good fighter. And yes, he basically took it to Bryce Mitchell. He did the best that he could. His defense was so good. It was on point, but he was just unable to generate any offense. And not because, he doesn't have any offense, because Bryce Mitchell was so good. And I think that was very surprising. Like, I expected Bryce Mitchell to win. I picked him to win, but I didn't think he would be that dominant. I thought he might have had some issues dealing with him, in certain positions, in the striking. I thought Charles Rosa's striking was a little bit more dynamic, but it was complete domination by Bryce Mitchell. I mean, It was basically like, a black belt rolling. I mean, not even, because that would have been submitted like a quick submission win. But it was complete domination. I mean, if you look at the scorecards, these were the following scorecards: 30-25, 30-25, and 30-24. You read that and you think, oh, this dude's getting rocked and dropped every single round. But that wasn't the case. He achieved all that with grappling. He, just out grappled him, controlled him in every position, threatened him. There was so many submissions that came close to being finished. And overall, a fantastic performance by Bryce Mitchell. I thought he was going to look good. I thought he was going to win, but I didn't think he was going to look that good. So that was kind of surprising. So I would say those were two most surprising things about UFC 249. All right, Scott, who had the best boxing? Now, Scott, I believe Scott, or it was maybe somebody else, but I think it was Scott who asked who had the best boxing going into the card. So now that we actually witnessed the card, who had the best boxing leaving the card? I had, the people that I thought would look good in the boxing department looked good, and except for Werdum. But he's more of a Muay Thai guy. He uses a lot of kicks, knees, clinching. So I didn't consider him in the category. We were just talking about pure boxing. But Calvin Kattar looked very good. I mean, his boxing, I already knew that was good going into it. But again, he just proves that he's so technical with his hands. The distance that he manages, the accuracy of the punches. He knows when to hit hard. He knows just when to hit to position, right? Because you can use your striking to move opponents and keep them where you want to keep them, take them where you want to take them. It's not just to cause damage. I mean, his levels, his technical levels in the boxing department are very high, and he's a very skilled fighter. He maybe starts a little bit slow. He has that tendency. I do think that 5-round fights suit him a lot better than 3-rounders. But he gets that tuned up, and he's able to, which is not a bad thing. I mean, obviously for the long run, you rather be a 5-round fighter than a 3-round, right? If you have championship aspirations. But coming up is important to be able to start hot early, and be able to administer the energy that you have for 5 rounds into 3. That's very useful. So he gets that down, then he's gonna be a lot of problem. He's gonna be problem to a lot of people. I mean, he already is, but I expect him to be getting a lot better. He's very young. Nick Hill on Twitter asks, it seems as if Conor is going to be coming back this summer in an empty arena. Who do you think he fights? I would enjoy a bout against Gaethje, but I doubt he fights Conor instead of fighting for the belt. Ooh, great question by Nick Hill. So, yes, for those that don't know, Adiatar, Conor McGregor's manager, recently commented that Conor McGregor's looking for a July return. And then we saw Conor McGregor yesterday, right, last night, I believe, take to Twitter and just take shots at everybody. Ferguson. No, I don't know if he took shots at Ferguson, maybe. But Dustin Poirier, Khabib, Justin Gaethje. And yeah, he was just spraying the block, basically. And so it looks like he's itching for a fight. This was an attitude that he didn't have before. Remember, he was very outspoken about sort of how Ireland was handling COVID-19, and he still is, supports, helping people and doing what he can to sort of make the situation a lot better for the people in his country. And it seemed fighting was in the back burner, but now it seems that he's certainly thinking about jumping back in there soon. So definitely believe a July return. I think it makes sense. I think. So you ask who does he return, right? Let me just double check. Oh yeah, who do you think he fights? So we saw Ali, Justin Gaethje's manager, be like, no, you're not fighting Gaethje. Quit talking shit. It's Gaethje and Khabib. That's what's going down. So it's weird because I actually believe that, but when it actually comes down to it and they actually set out an offer, I do believe that if Khabib doesn't want to jump into competition this summer and quite early, and then if Gaethje wants to be active, I can see the UFC offering him an option to defend his belt, especially with McGregor, because any McGregor fight would be big. And that could actually be more money for Gaethje to fight McGregor than Nurmagomedov. So on that standpoint, I wouldn't discard it. Money talks at the end of the day, but at the same time, I feel like Ali, Khabib, and Justin hate so. First of all, they're in a team. They're managed by Ali, and Gaethje and Nurmagomedov are friendly towards each other. I was at the Dominance Media Day at UFC 248, and they were around each other. I mean, they know that they could very well fight each other at some point, but they're cool. They're respectful, and yeah. So I would guess that they would work together to make that fight happen. And Khabib, he has a lot of money. He doesn't really care about having more. I'm sure it'd be nice for him, but that's not his priority. His priority has always been to fight the best and to prove that he's the best lightweight of all time. And at this point in time, if you want to do that, you fight Justin Gaethje. You don't fight Conor McGregor a second time. And Gaethje seems pretty determined to also prove that. I mean, money seems to be obviously an important thing for him, but it's not everything. Plus, that dude's racking up so many bonuses. I think it's like 9 bonuses in 7 fights. So he's made a pretty penny in the UFC. And yeah, I think that's the fight that happens next. And he said it himself in the post-fight presser. He's like, yeah, I'm fighting Nurmagomedov. So you can discard that. I don't think Conor's fighting either of those guys next. So I think that the thing that makes most sense is the Nate Diaz fight. I think, look, if you want to campaign for a title shot, which he does, Conor McGregor has been vocal about this, you need wins. But you also want to make money and want to have big money fights. So you're not going to take just any contender in the top 5, right? So the bout with Nate Diaz, one could possibly get you a win, extend your winning streak to 2 in a row. It's still a big fight. You get the trilogy out of the way. People want to see it. It's a big money fight. And, it's a good fight for him. He's won before. So there should be some confidence there that he can pull it off again. So yeah. Plus, if anything, Conor McGregor has looked good since that fight. Obviously, he's had some hiccups as well, the Khabib fight. But I'm saying, he did beat Cerrone fairly quick, looked to be good, passed all the hurdles, didn't seem to get any legal trouble in the lead up to the fight. And Nate Diaz, he's been a little bit more active, but at the same time, he took a lot of damage, man. Those scar tissues are starting to pile up, and the more he fights, the more he gets cut, and the more that's becoming an issue, and the more damage he's been taking, period. So it just seems to be the perfect fight for Conor, for both, to be honest. So I think that's what goes down next. And they had that little back and forth on Instagram. I don't know if you guys saw this. Dana White posted a photo, like a graphic, and of Conor McGregor on his Instagram. And then Nate Diaz replied something like, shut your bitch ass up or something like that. I don't know. And Conor McGregor was like, yo, sign the contract. So I think there could be something there. Conor McGregor is a smart man. He's a smart businessman. And he knows the Nate Diaz fight is good business for both his pocket and his career. So I think that's the fight that goes down next for him. And hopefully it is, because it doesn't disrupt the picture at lightweight or welterweight. And that's good news. Yeah. All right. So next question is by Chris Molina. Shouts out to Chris. Cool dude. So, Bryce Mitchell versus Ryan Hall. Who do you have? I think that's an easy one. I think Ryan Hall. I mean, Bryce Mitchell's, biggest attribute is the ground game. And I think if you want to beat someone like Ryan Hall, you got to be proficient on the ground, right? You got to be able to avoid submissions. But at the same time, you also got to know that once the fight hits the ground with Ryan Hall, you could be as good as you want. There's a good chance you might get submitted. So I don't really know what's the perfect fighter to defeat someone like Ryan Hall. I guess like a very strong wrestler that's able to frustrate Ryan Hall, not get taken down, but also have the confidence to go in there and throw hands and cause some damage. Because the problem a lot of fighters are having with Hall for the meantime is they're so focused on not getting taken down or not getting caught in a knee bar, right? When Hall does these rolls, that they kind of shift all their focus there. So Ryan Hall just goes, okay, well, I'm going to outstrike you. My striking might not be the best, but you're so worried about the ground that I can outstrike you because your hands are low. Your focus is on your legs on the ground rather than on my hands. So he'll throw out their kicks, he'll throw out their punches, and yeah, have success there. So I don't know who the right person to be Ryan Hall, but I don't think it'd be someone with the style of Bryce Mitchell, because Bryce Mitchell wants to take the fight to the ground, and if you do that with Ryan Hall, it's usually that doesn't end up so well. So I would go with Ryan Hall on that one. All right, question number 8. This is by Curtis CPT. He asks, is Michael Chandler too old to make an impact in the UFC if he chooses to leave Bellator? So Michael Chandler, former Bellator lightweight champion, a long-time contender in the division, one of the faces of Bellator as far as the original products. I believe he's been in Bellator since 2010. He's getting near towards the end of his contract. He only has one fight left. That fight's going to be against Benson Henderson at some point when Bellator resumes. And he's testing free agency. And it seems, he wants to make good money, but I don't know. Maybe he stays with Bellator, maybe he doesn't. But I do not think he's too old to make an impact in the UFC if he chooses to leave Bellator, to answer your question. Because age is important, obviously. But you got to look at, I think you got to look at the body, right? You got to look at the body, at the athletic abilities, and the MMA age. The MMA age doesn't correlate usually with your age, your biological age. So there are fighters that have been fighting since they were 18. And by the time, they're 28, which should be just getting into the prime of their career, they're burnt out. They've taken a lot of damage. They've been knocked out. Their chin's not the same. They have a lot of wear and tear, right? And then you get guys like Joel Romero, these guys that start MMA fairly old. And, by the time they're deep into their 30s, 38, 39, in this case, Romero's 43, they're in the prime of their career. They haven't taken much damage. Yes, they're old, but, genetics plays a big part in this, as well as discipline. You can still be in your 30s and be in pretty good shape. And as long as you have the right technique, you can make up for those athletic gaps that maybe the younger competition would present, right? So if you look at someone like Michael Chandler, the dude is ripped as hell. He is in fantastic shape. He doesn't seem to be slowing down as far as his body's concerned. And yes, he's 33 years old, I believe, 33, 34, but the guy looks in fantastic shape. He's in better shape than some of the guys that might be 30 or in their late 20s. So, no, I don't think it's too old for Michael Chandler, and I think he's very skilled. I think if he goes to the UFC, I don't know if he'll be champion, but I think he breaks into the top 10 for sure. Top 5? Maybe, depending on how the competition looks then. But again, it's a very, very good weight class. The best weight class the UFC has to offer, in my opinion. So, no, I don't think he's too old to have an impact on the UFC. I think he can go there and get pretty big wins. And I think if he stays in Bellator, I think he could become champion. Could very well. All right. Last Twitter question by Chris Molina, and then I'll be taking things over to the live chat. I'll go a little longer in the live chat this time because we had technical issues at the very beginning of the stream. I apologize for that. Things happen. So yeah, I'll make that up by going a few minutes past 8 p.m. So question number 9, final question on Twitter by Chris Molina. Most impressive performance of the night. Most impressive performance. That's a good one. I mean, I think Henry Cejudo looked great. But I think Dominic Cruz, believe it or not, I don't think he looked. I don't think he looked bad, but I don't think he looked the best he's ever looked. He looked a little slower than usual, a little heavier on his feet. He didn't look as bouncy. There wasn't as much movement as we're used to seeing with Cruz, and that's key and fundamental to his style because he's not really a power puncher. But I think he still holds up, and I think he's still a very good fighter. But stopping him was very good for Cejudo's career. I didn't think that would happen. I thought he would maybe decision him, but I didn't think he would stop him, and he did. Connected with a knee, followed up with ground and pound. Say whatever you want about the stoppage being controversial or not. He still dropped him with a knee and had him, wobbly and had him hurt. So I thought that was a surprising performance. But I think what surprised me the most, I would say, would be Justin Gaethje's. I mean, I thought he could win, but I thought Tony Ferguson would give him a lot more problems. And it seems that, yes, Tony Ferguson had some moments, but for the most part, it was just kind of like a beating from Gaethje's side. I mean, I would have to rewatch it to double down on that. I do think there could be an argument for Ferguson that he maybe might have taken round two. He dropped him with a nice uppercut, and prior to that, in the lead up to that, he was having some success. He was landing that jab quite well, quite often, and yeah. But for the most part, I think Gaethje just had an amazing performance. Also, I predicted if he was going to win, he was probably going to win within 2 rounds. I mean, Shane Burgos said that. He's like, I think Gaethje is going to win within 2 rounds. We were both taken away and surprised at his cardio. He won 5 rounds on a high-paced fight against Tony Ferguson, who's a high-paced fighter, world-class fighter as well. And he looked like he could fight 2-3 more rounds. Maybe not 3, like 2 more. I mean, he looked to be, I mean, at the very end, he was still throwing leather. I mean, he actually finished Ferguson. I mean, he was still packing a lot of power behind his punches. His punches looked quick. They didn't look sluggish. He was throwing often, maybe not as often as the first, obviously. There's some fatigue there. But what I'm trying to get at is that he was very much fresh, almost as if he was preparing for a 5-round fight the entire time. So that surprised me. The win didn't necessarily surprise me, but the way he did it surprised me. So yeah, fantastic performance by Justin Gaethje. Hey, I feel kind of bad for Ferguson, but this, MMA is ruthless. This is the game. That's a man that should have fought for the real title, but politics and bad luck got in the way. So wherever Tony Ferguson is, salute to you, my friend, because you weren't supposed to take that fight and you took it anyways. That's how badass the dude is, and yeah. That's why people love him. He's the definition of anywhere, anytime, anybody. So yeah. All right. So I'm going to take things over to the live chat. If you didn't get to submit your questions via Twitter, now is your time. So let's do this, shall we? Christopher Flamini. ¿Qué pasa, mijo? ¿Todo bien, papá? Hope all is well, my friend. All right. Okay, now you guys are reminding me of the technical issues. Yes, the 2 links. Okay, no, not 1 link. Now it works. This and that. All right. Ernesto Diaz. This is not really a question, but a comment, and I would like to comment on it as well, so I'll highlight it. Ernesto Diaz says, for as much of a professional as everyone loves to hail Dominic Cruz, he sounded awfully salty when he started accusing Keith Peterson of smelling like booze and cigarettes. Stoppage was fair, in my opinion. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I do agree with the saltiness. He did look a little bitter. I mean, if you keep in mind, like, this was a huge moment for him. Long layoff, never been stopped before. He, not gonna lie, he did seem to be recovering. I mean, he was getting up against the fence and he was covering. I do think the stoppage wasn't perfect, but you're not gonna get a perfect stoppage every time. It's just impossible. Sometimes you do, and when that happens, amazing, great. But for the most part, you're gonna get either a good stoppage, a decent stoppage, And I think as long as that goes down, you're in the clear, right? Because, look, the fact is, whether Dom wants to admit it or not, he did get dropped, and it was bad. He got hit with a hard knee. You see him when he connects, and he's falling, like his face is like it's like warping because of the shot. Like he's losing all control over his motor skills. He took, I think it was 11 unanswered shots on the ground. He looked very wobbly on his knees. And just as when he started to recover and get up, the fight was stopped. And yes, the round was also coming close to an end. Again, not the perfect stoppage. I would agree with Dom on that end. But I don't think it was a horrible stoppage. Like, I don't think he got robbed in any way. And if you look at the fight, I mean, things could have changed if he would have managed to get out of that round. But it looked like Segura was pretty much on the driver's seat for the most part. So I don't know. I mean, and look, as you fight what? How many fights does he have in his record? I think like 20, 30 fights. You fight that long, some stoppages are going to be good, some stoppages are going to be not so good. And that goes both ways. I'm sure, maybe there's other fighters on his record that he beat that perhaps felt that they could have continued. or maybe there was something off in the refereeing or whatever. I would admit, again, not the greatest stoppage, but I think it was a decent stoppage. And the booze and cigarettes comment, and John Morgan made a comment on this on MMA Junkie's live chat earlier today, and I think it was pretty fair. Like, cigarettes, there's nothing wrong with smelling like cigarettes. Like, people that smoke usually smell like cigarettes. Their clothes smells like cigarettes. It's not a healthy thing to do, but certainly it doesn't warp your judgment in any way. It's not like, I mean, you can maybe feel a little bit lightheaded, right? But it's not like you hit a cigarette and, oh, I'm fucked up, like if you were drunk or any other drug per se. So there's no issue with that. The booze thing, okay, that's an issue. You shouldn't be officiating a fight while drunk. But again, that's, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't there. I didn't smell Keith Peterson, so I don't know. But Keith Peterson, I mean, that I can remember, do I know a single bad stoppage from Keith Peterson? Not that I can remember. Has he ever been in any controversial thing? No. So if this is his most controversial thing, he's pretty damn good, because I don't think this was that controversial. So I think he did a fine job refereeing that fight. Let's see. Mystic Gamer, what's your opinion on Conor's Twitter rant on Khabib and Justin? LOL. It's Conor announcing to the world that he's ready for the fight game. He's ready. He's ready to go. Most of his tweets have been centered towards supporting those, in the front lines against COVID-19 and helping those that need help within these tough times. And for the first time, I mean, he's taking some shots here and there, but this was the real big one. For the most part, I've kind of become numb to almost Conor McGregor's Twitter stuff. So if stuff happens, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But this one felt a little bit different. It felt like he's back, and it feels like he's taking this July return very seriously, and he's weighing out his options. I mean, he's a man that envisions great things and aims for them, and more often than not, he achieves them. And if he can't get the champion, maybe he can get the next best thing, interim champion. So I don't know if in his mind he's convinced he's gonna get those fights, but I don't think so. But again, he thinks, given his star power, given that he has a win over Cerrone in 40 seconds, maybe there's enough there to get the wheels turning for a type of matchup. And he is big money. When he says the red panty night, I know it's become kind of like a joke, but it's true. You fight him, you make good money for the most part. So he does have that to entice his opponents. So into taking a fight. I still don't think he gets either Justin or Khabib, but shit, it puts him on the news and puts him on the maps. We just came off a huge event. It was trending everywhere. The buys were off the roof, and he's attaching his name to that event for PR, promotion, etc., whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's all I can say about that. Don't have any further opinion on that. As far as his actual takes, I think they're not great. But again, I don't blame him. He's a guy trying to get a fight. But the whole, he was hugging my leg and this and that, that's kind of BS. I mean, he got dropped on the feet with the right hand by Khabib. And on the ground, he certainly wasn't just holding him down. Khabib was smashing him with ground and pound. So the whole leg hugging thing, he wasn't doing anything. Yeah, that ain't true. Gary Freeman. What's up, Danny? Holy crap, it's nice to have some fights to talk about. Yes, it is. It is very, very nice. And I'm glad the UFC's up and running. Again, I do have concerns, and I think we all should have concerns about COVID-19 and make sure that as a journalist, I'm doing my best to, journalism is the watchdog of the bigger powers, to make sure that everything is running properly. Obviously, the athletic commissions and even the UFC itself have a responsibility as well to make that happen. But I think, it's worth figuring a way to hold events. I mean, everybody's figuring things out, right? Like if you look at, for example, my company, right? I work for USA Today, MMA Junkie. They sent me out 2 packages full of face masks. Do I have them around here? You know, it's not many, but they send me in case I have to go report something, you know, go to the office, etc. Like we're figuring out ways to get workers, you know, restaurants. One of the faces would be opening, or like I recently read an article where like barbershops are opening, but only letting one customer at a time, and making sure there's enough time in between. Customers, right? Airbnb, I think it's doing a thing where, you know, you can rent out places, but then make sure there's a day in between each booking, so proper cleaning is done. All these measures are taken. So UFC is no different. Well, again, we're in a pandemic. This whole thing's very new, so we don't know the perfect recipe to make this happen. But what's the responsible thing to do? Put some thought into it, work things out, invest into a protocol, you know, consult experts on what's the best course of action to host fights, right? And then you host them, and then you see what works, what doesn't. I think the media's concern earlier in April was, you know, there's no testing because nobody got tested in Brasilia. This is way too early into the pandemic. The right protocols don't seem to be in place. They're not working with the state, with an athletic commission. They're self-regulating. Like, there's a lot of red flags here. That was the media concerns. I don't think anybody in media was opposed to having fights. I don't think anybody in media wanted the fighters not to get paid. You know, all we wanted was the right measures, and let's figure these things out. And the UFC postponed the event, took more time, clearly put in the time to figure things out, got testing, and here we are. So, yes, glad the fights are back. And yes, this will be a learning experience, and this whole thing should be taken very seriously. Dana White, quit the fist bumping and the hugging the fighters. Everything should be social distancing until we can't avoid it. And that means the actual fighting. But I think the face-offs, I think they're not entirely necessary. All right. Anyways, let me keep going down this live chat here. Danny going full Masvidal. So yeah, dude, I haven't had a haircut. The last time I got a haircut was like a week before UFC 248. So that was early March. I got a haircut because I was like, you know, I'm gonna go cover this event. I'm gonna be on camera, so I'm gonna look presentable. Then shit hit the fan. I should probably text my barber. He's a huge MMA fan, and he actually boxes. He's a Dominican dude, Manny, great guy, super cool. I should text him to see how he's doing. But anyways, I miss him. Look at my hair. I mean, it's horrible. And then the facial hair, I had shaved a lot earlier, and I was shaving because that's what the CDC recommends. But at this time, I'm always in lockdown, so it's like it doesn't really have a factor. So my whole line of thinking was, how savage and how homeless looking can I possibly get without actually being homeless? So here I am. I am gonna keep growing my hair out as long as I can, and I'm not gonna shave my beard for a long time and just get that like Evan Tanner look when he returned to the UFC and like fought Kendall Grove, just like a wild man. So we'll see how wild I get. We'll see. You guys will watch this progression the more live videos I do. But for now, I feel like it looks kind of cool. It's like a wild. It's not as wild yet. Wait till the beard really kicks in, as I had it like a few months ago. Then I'm gonna look like something that lives deep in the wilderness of Central Park and only comes out at night. Let's see. What other questions? Again, now is your time to submit questions on the live chat. I'm addressing those now. I'd crack a joke about the stoner eyes, but he swears he don't. I'm out here buying vision right now. What? Oh, nah, dude. I'm not high. Do my eyes look red? Nah, dude. I actually haven't smoked in a long time. Good while. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, today I worked. I'm on the computer all day looking at screens. I'm looking at screens right now. certainly that doesn't help. I also think the lighting's not great. I'm gonna one of the things I want to do and invest in a little bit of lighting and improve the lighting so it's a little less dark. And usually, lighting improves the quality of the video so much, like the actual definition of the video, because you can have an HD camera, but if you don't have proper lighting, you ain't gonna get HD. So yeah, I got to do that, and to do that, I got to set up a rig and all that. All that's money and time, which I don't have at this moment. Times are rough, but when I get a chance, I'll invest in it. By the way, I think if I'm not mistaken, I was able to unlock the super chat. I'm not sure if it's on right now. Might be. Let me see. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I believe it is. I checked some stuff, went into the settings, and I apparently had the option to do a super chat, which I didn't think I was able to. I thought it was like at least 10,000 subscribers or 30. I read it somewhere else, but apparently that's on. Again, I'm not asking for money. I don't think, certainly your donations won't influence whether I take your questions or not. But if you want to support this channel and you want to continue to see this thing grow, hopefully at a more rapid pace, certainly a donation would come a long way. But again, don't feel obligated to donate. If that's even an option. I messed with the settings and apparently it's working now. But completely up to you guys. Don't feel obligated to do so. All right, back to the questions. Ro Sharma, I have a question. Why is the media so nice to Cormier? I'd like to believe that we're fair and nice to everybody, meaning we're not. I don't think the media is rude to a specific fighter. If you say why isn't there negative media about Cormier, I think is because he just does everything right. Like, why is there negative media about John Jones or Conor McGregor? Because they get in trouble with the law. They do things that are illegal and that are bad. So when you report, okay, someone did this, then it might look like shit talking, but we're reporting the facts. And as long as you're sticking to the facts, you're not being nice or mean. You're just reporting the facts. So the truth is that Cormier is a great father. He is a coach. He is someone that helps their community. He's a fantastic commentator. He's a hell of a fighter. He's been a company guy, always never skipped a single challenge, never played games. You can say he might be playing games now with the Stipe, but he's acquired so much interest that he can now sort of pull these things off. But I don't think the media is necessarily nice to Cormier. I think we're just fair. I'd like to believe, because if that's the case, where there's preference on fighters, that's certainly an issue. That shouldn't exist, But he's never been a controversial figure. He's never really done anything that would make us, not make us, but would force us, because it is our job to report something negative on him. I think the worst things that came out from his career were his rivalry with John Jones, the fights outside of the octagon, right, at the face-off. They got pretty nasty with the comments. But even that's part of the fight game, so everybody understands that. And if anything, it made it to be one of the best rivalries that we've seen, in recent memory. So yeah, to answer your question, as far as why is the media nice to Cormier, I don't think we are. I think we're fair, and there's so many positives to about Cormier that's what gets reported. But look, if Cormier, and I'm not saying he is, if he were to do something bad and were to get in trouble, drinking and driving, etc., I don't know, name whatever you want, we would have to report on that. But just to be clear, that did not happen. I'm just making a hypothetical. You dye your hair light brown, you guys could be Shaggy and Scoob. Yeah, I would also have to feed my dog a lot more, because he's like 24 pounds. Yeah, and then for that scenario, I would have to eat a lot more too, and then probably get stoned. Then we'll be Scooby and Shaggy. Those two were definitely stoned. Always eating, always had the munchies, always clueless. Oh, where are we? What's going on? Yeah. As a kid, I never caught on to that, but as I got older, it all made sense. One of my favorite cartoons. Scooby-Doo's my favorite cartoon of all time. I used to be obsessed with that thing. I watched all the movies, everything. All right. Okay, Ernesto Diaz. You've stated on a few occasions that you have a background in combat. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from your wrestling days? Yeah, so I've actually talked about this multiple times, but I'll remind everybody. I'm no badass. I'm no skilled fighter or anything like that. But I did wrestle in high school for 2 years. Um, wasn't great at it, but won some matches, even at a varsity level. Won a couple matches, even at counties. Didn't win any major tournaments. I mean, I was decent at best, but I put in the work. I showed up. I was in the wrestling room. Then after that, I started doing jiu-jitsu. I got my blue belt in 2013 and kept training. I did multiple jiu-jitsu tournaments. A lot of them I placed. I placed in Naga. I placed in a few other regional and smaller ones. Never competed in like big IBJJF, but always wanted to. I started having a lot of injuries, toward my meniscus. Then I had a hernia, which I had to get a surgery for like a couple years ago. And then, I also moved to New York, which got in the way of my training. Here in New York is so hard to train and so expensive as well. When I moved, I was so broke. So, as of late, my grappling hasn't really been addressed. But every now and then, especially when I go home, I go back to the room and I do all right. I go against guys that are constantly grappling and I hold my own. I would say if I had to guess where I am at level, I would say I'm like a purple belt level, which is pretty decent. Like I can see something on the ground and I know all the submissions. I know what's going on. I know what's, again, I'm no expert. I'm no black belt, but I'm certainly someone that can roll with a black belt and actually, I mean, I'll get smoked, but I won't be clueless as far as like I'm just doing nothing. No, like I know how to grapple. I grappled once like Miguel Restrepo. He's a MMA fighter, local MMA fighter in Florida, brown belt. Held my own. He submitted me. I didn't submit him, but got a few sweeps on him. I'm decent on the ground. And then I've been doing boxing already I started like last summer. Obviously the pandemic got in the way, but really been taking that seriously. And yeah, I've been boxing and I love boxing. I feel so healthy. Like with jiu-jitsu, you're always getting injured. With boxing, unless you're sparring, you can get, rocked and all that. But depending on who you're sparring, for the most part, I've sparred guys that are pretty responsible and take it easy on me. But if you're just hitting the bag and all that, man, you get in amazing shape. You feel great. Nothing hurts. Your neck doesn't hurt. Your elbows don't hurt. Maybe if you throw a bad punch, maybe you can sort of hurt your shoulder a little bit. But for the most part, it's really hard to get injured in boxing. So yeah, I have a pretty extensive, I would say my most extensive experience would be on the grappling department, having done jiu-jitsu for several years, having wrestled as well. And then recently I picked up boxing. And whenever this is over, I plan on going back to jiu-jitsu and hopefully compete again in blue belt, purple division, whatever it is. But yeah, it's fun. Dude, cater out here again, bro. I don't even own a bong, but no, I'm not smoking, I swear. Just sipping on my beer. All right, so it is 8:08. I did go past 8 p.m., but again, I said that I would go a few minutes extra due to the fact that there was some technical issues at the beginning. I'll answer a couple more of these and then I'll get out. By the way, I already saw a couple people donated on the super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Count 100% that money is going towards improving this channel and you'll see those improvements over time. All right. Any more questions? Ka Molina, with Ngannou looking so dominant, how impressive is Stipe's performance over him? It's very impressive. Defeating Ngannou is an impressive feat, 100%. But I do believe the Ngannou that we see now is a different fighter than the one that we saw against Stipe. So I think that fight could look very differently if they were to rematch. So yes, it is impressive. However, the current version that we have of Ngannou in our minds is a version that was non-existent when fought Stipe. Again, when he fought Stipe, he was a very dangerous fighter. Very dangerous. Don't get me wrong. But certainly I think we can all agree that Ngannou is better today than he was then. So very impressive performance, I would say. Stipe's performance is still very impressive over him. I don't want to discard or take anything away from his performance, but I did want to mention that Ngannou has gotten better, and you should have interest in a rematch because I think Ngannou still offers things that he couldn't possibly offer the first time out. So yeah. All right, I'll answer one more and dip out. Mm, hmm. Who would you say hits harder at 155, Justin or Conor? They have different types of power. I feel like Justin has a little bit more pop in the sense that that he packs more power, but I think Conor McGregor is more precise, which makes him more dangerous as far as being able to knock out people. I feel like McGregor is a much better knockout artist than Justin, as far as early on, but as far as an overall picture, I think Justin, given the fact that he has cardio for days, he can actually pick up more knockouts. Especially in a 5-round fight, he can pick up a knockout in the fifth. I mean, he stopped Tony in the fifth. But as far as if you're just putting them in a small window, like, all right, you're scrapping this guy for 30 seconds. McGregor's the guy. I mean, his accuracy is insane. He still has a lot of power, especially on his left hand, and he's got amazing precision. So usually a good amount of power, amazing precision, always ends in a knockout. I lied. I'll take one more because I'm having fun. I'll take it till I finish this beer. So maybe two more. Mm, let's see. All right, this was a good question. I kind of skipped it to answer the Connor one. By the Dill Daddy. The fun. Okay. Oh, dude, what is he drinking? He's drinking like those tall like margaritas. Nice. Looks like he's having fun. Um, Usually, by the way, those drinks are always the worst. They got the most sugar, and they get you fucked up, and the hangover is just horrible, horrible, horrible. But yeah, they taste good, right? Who is a fighter in the UFC that has a real potential to be a star, one that they are not pushing yet? Okay, so I'll answer this kind of like in a time machine mode, and I should take credit for this because I called it and I saw it coming before Masvidal was a star. Go look back at, I don't even know the exact episode, but even on the MMA beat, like early on the MMA beat, or like early when Luke Thomas took over the MMA Hour and I was producing it. Dude, we at some point we talked about Masvidal. I think it might have been when he fought. Let me pull up his record. But anyways, I was a big Masvidal supporter as far as like, dude, how is this guy not a star? I even said it. He's the Miami version of Nate Diaz. Because like, dude, I grew up in South Florida. So like the way this guy talks, and he's real, like much like the Diaz brothers, like there ain't no bullshit with this guy. This guy's straight up street. He used to fight in the Kimbo street fighting series in backyards. There's footage of that. I mean, the dude's so Miami, and he's got personality for days. He can talk shit. He's a fantastic fighter. He's exciting. I never understood why the UFC didn't get behind that guy, and I said it for years. I said it for years early on the MAB, way before he blew up, and I always said it. And people are always like, "Oh yeah, yeah," kind of like not take me lightly, but nobody ever be like, "Oh, you know what? They're right." People be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, Masvidal's good, this and that," and then look where he's now. Let me pull up his record. Dude, I called him. I called that thing, and all he needed was a few good performances, and look where he's at now. But he's super charismatic and a fantastic fighter, good on camera. And I never understood why the media never kind of gave him more attention. I don't know why the UFC never really pushed him. But I think that even the first time I interviewed him, he didn't even have the Street Jesus thing going. He still had the tape, and I remember he used to walk around with a blazer, like a white blazer. I interviewed him once at Miami Children's Hospital, and he used to walk around with a brush, like brush his hair. Slick. Dude, slick. Yeah, I think it might have been when he was like fighting No, not Alec because that was 2015. It was probably like one of his 2017 performances, like I don't know, like Jake or Donald Cerrone performance. But yeah, man, that's one guy I would say if I had to go back in time. But to answer your question, as far as who's somebody that the UFC is not pushing now that I feel like has potential, potential to be a star, not just a great fighter. I would say let me pull up the UFC rankings because that is a fantastic question. And look, just like Masvidal, there are tons of cases out there. I actually got one. There are tons of cases out there of guys that like could very well be stars, but the promotion doesn't get behind them. Media, maybe is also their fault a little bit. Their management is a big influencer as well because yes, Jorge Masvidal is a star, and yes, the media has something to do with it. The UFC obviously has something to do with it. Masvidal obviously has something to do with it with the performances, but the management is the one that goes out there and sets up interviews. The management is the one handling the interview schedule. Where you go, where you're gonna go, this and that. Before the Nate Diaz fight, Masvidal was traveling all over the world. And who was next to him? His manager, Abraham Kawa. Dude, I remember seeing him everywhere. We were at ATT at American Top Team. At the time, I was working for MMA Fighting. They flew me down there. And I was talking to Abe, just because, we were doing a scrum. We are getting ready to do a scrum. So just talking to him like, hey, stuff about his fighter, etc. And he was there. And then I believe then I saw him in New York again. Again, it was all super quick. And then I went to Mexico City to cover Stevens versus Yair Rodriguez. He was there. A lot of that is also management as well. So there's a lot of factors that involve the making of a star. But someone who I think could be a star is Bobby Green. That's the guy. Again, very real. He shows up with and I mean this with all respect, and I'm not trying to glorify pimps or anything like that, because obviously, prostitution is, pimps usually don't have a good rep. And again, I'm not advocating pimps or anything like that. But, and I'm not saying Bobby Green is a pimp, but like I remember him showing up to scrums with like a typical stereotypical movie type pimp, like a purple blazer, and he's got this swag and with hats and shit. And the dude's real. He's always like in interviews, he's always exciting. As far as he always gives you a good interview, and his fights are always exciting. He's got good boxing, he's got good striking, keeps things on the feet. That's what usually the casuals like to see. The casuals don't enjoy ground game. Every now and then there's a fighter that might wow them, but for the most part, they want to see guys knuckle up, and the guy that knuckles up is Bobby Green. And very much like Masvidal, Nate Diaz, and other guys, he's got a little bit of that street swag. He's very skilled, and he fights anybody, anywhere, anytime. And that's a guy that was always given tough fights. I think maybe it would have served them well if he would have gotten sort of tune-up matchups and would have gotten a little bit more PR in the UFC behind him. But I think that's someone that could have been, still could be. He's only 33, but could be a big personality within the space, a much bigger personality within the space. I would add, because I do think he's a personality. And like that, there are a few other guys out there that you look at and you go, okay, this guy could be something. Especially in the other markets. Sometimes since we live in the U.S., we have U.S. mentality. So we don't think of someone who could be a star in South America, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Russia, in China, right? That's why UFC has people working in all these regions, right, to identify the next star of each market, because it is important to have stars all across the world, not just in the U.S. Look at Zhang Wei Li, right? But it gets much difficult because then you got to keep in mind cultural factors, things that might be appreciated in certain countries that might not necessarily be appreciated here, right? Something that I thought was a big mistake, for example, like I remember a few years, like in the 2010s, a lot of fighters with Cain Velasquez being champion, the launch of the Ultimate Fighter Latin America, it seemed, they were going to a lot of Latin American countries, especially Mexico, almost like twice a year. It seemed at that time that market was very hot. And it's funny, you just started seeing the UFC sort of pump these fighters into Latin market and get them to do like Spanish interviews and put them in front of Hispanic outlets. And a lot of them didn't speak Spanish. And I think that was kind of like not a poor job, but I feel like maybe the research wasn't there in the sense of like, dude, just because you have a Hispanic last name and you were born in the US, you think you're gonna be a star in a Hispanic country, you know? Like you gotta have a that's why like people were high on Jair Rodriguez. Like it's important to be born there, you know? So yeah. Anyways, I'm going on a little rant here. I'll answer one more and get out. I swear this is the last one. I won't hold you guys hostage. I'm almost done with my beer. Who other? If I ever think of someone else, I'll bring it up. Remind me. Because that is a fantastic question. I think Bobby Green's up there. I'm trying to think of others. Dude, I think Ian McCall. Ian McCall at flyweight could have been big as far as like big personality. And the size of the weight class being 125, I think it puts a limit. But I feel like he, you know, maybe not like Cejudo, but like he could have been someone that could have been bigger than what he was. He also had a lot of bad luck because to do this, you have to win. You can't just get pushed and lose a bunch of fights. But there was something cool about Ian McCall. His style was fun. He was just a cool dude. He had the whole Uncle Creepy persona with the stash. And at that time, I remember like it was a big revolution, especially like in men's fashion and men's style. Like I remember the pompadours came back in style. I rocked the pompadour and I was wearing like Suavecito pomade. Lay right also became like a cultural thing. Barbershops kind of took off. And men started kind of putting more attention onto their hair and the parts and all that shit. And Ian McCall was very early in the front of that. He was one of the guys that looked cool, that looked modern, that looked, you know, he wasn't part of the whole affliction and kind of like a stereotypical cage fighter, like, oh, just bleed type shit. Like he looked very much like someone who was trendy at the time. He still is, but yeah, he's someone that I feel like if he could have, imagine if he would have beaten Demetrius Johnson and he would have ended up, because that fight was close. Remember, there was some controversy there. It was a draw, but then they gave it to Demetrius Johnson. Then it got overturned. Something like that. I forgot. But if he would have won that fight and he came close to winning it and he would have fought Joe B and would have won that, dude, who knows? Who knows if how strong the flyweight division could have been, and especially if he would have stayed healthy because he also had a lot of injuries. But yeah, there are a lot of guys that had or that have start power that perhaps might not be getting exploited. But yeah, that's a fantastic question. I like to think of those things as far as both skill wise and from a business standpoint. Kind of like the back talk of MMA a little bit in that sense. Because it's a sport, but it's also very much a business. Very much a business. So yeah, that's a fantastic question. Who asked that? That was the dude with the girly drink with the cocktail, with the crazy cocktail, the sugary cocktail. That's probably in Vegas, I assume. You see those things everywhere, like people just walking around with them. That's why you don't have to get like a bunch of drinks all the time. You just get this giant thing and sip on it the entire time. Let's see. All right, this is a fun one. I'll get out by Anonymous123, and also Anonymous dropped a little bit of money on the super chat, so shouts out. If you're playing soccer against your friends, which UFC fighter do you want on your team? So this is a great question because me having a soccer mind, I keep a close eye on the fighters that are into soccer, especially that play soccer. Demetrius Johnson plays soccer. He actually believes that soccer training makes his footwork a lot better and being explosive, and I can definitely see it because if you think about soccer, it's not like track and field where you're just running nonstop in a straight line. Soccer players are going from zero to 60 all the time, switching directions all the time. And if you look at DJ's game, that's his game. Dude, we'll pop you, switch angles, bam, bam, explode, switch takedown, change levels. That dude, I don't know if he's good at soccer, but I've seen a few videos. But he certainly knows the game. And dude, having that ability will take you very far in soccer, especially with the dribbling. Hell yeah. So Demetrius Johnson, definitely. I know Khabib is into soccer and he plays. I don't know how good he is though. But Russia has a good history of having good soccer. So maybe him. Kenny Florian actually had a scholarship at a college for a soccer player for being, for playing on their soccer team. So definitely him. He's retired, so I don't know how good of a shape he's in, but I would assume he's still, and plus he's Peruvian. Hispanics just, you grow up playing your entire life, and that just stays. Like I can hop on the field right now. I'm rusty. I've been drinking. I've been eating shitty food in this quarantine. I gotta admit. I mean, fairly healthy. Some things, I've been snacking a lot, and I can still do all right. I still have that Colombian touch. So yeah, so definitely Kenny Florian. I'm trying to think of others. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there was a fighter. This might have been on World Series of Fighting or PFL, I think. He was actually a backup goalkeeper professionally for Chelsea. I'm forgetting his name, but legit, like he was on their roster. There's pictures of him, like, all those soccer players always take like awkward pictures of you like play FIFA. They're always like staring somewhere or have weird hairstyles or whatever. But he was there, so definitely him. I mean, somebody that played pro. Jose Aldo plays soccer. Definitely him. Yeah, there's a few guys that are soccer players within the UFC. All right, that was fun. I appreciate it, like the people that donated on the super chat. Thank you so much. This is the first time that I opened that feature, and it's very cool. Again, I'm not gonna. Maybe down the line, if like questions start becoming a little bit overwhelming, and for the most part, I think I do a good job at like answering everyone's question. Usually there might be like a couple left unsaid, like left unanswered, but for the most part, I answer all of them. If it gets to a point where I'm getting so many questions, maybe very much like Luke does on his channel, maybe I'll start filtering where those get a little bit of priority, but I don't want to make it like an exclusive club where like only if you donate, like I'm going to answer your question. No, this is your show. This is a show of the people. Without you guys, I can't be doing this because there wouldn't be any questions and I wouldn't be talking to anybody. So 100% yours. If you donate, is because you want to support this channel and this project that I'm doing. And believe me, as you guys have seen in the last few weeks, it's improving and it will continue to improve over time. So I appreciate the support, not only monetarily for those that donated, but submitting questions, liking the video, subscribing. All that comes to a long way. So yeah, very happy with the way this is going. And that's it, man. That's all I got to say. So yeah, thank you very much. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. Tomorrow there's fights. I'm not going to have a preview show because, I have this, but I thought I was going to get more questions about the fights, but maybe I do something in the morning. I don't know. Follow me on Twitter at Danny Segura TV. You see it right here. There you go. Maybe I'll do something. But certainly I'm going to post fight, certainly with the two events coming. I'm definitely going to have a little bit more content here. Well, and then look to do a little bit more collabs and bring different type of content like I did for UFC 249 with Shane Burgos assisting me there with the analysis. So yeah, I plan on doing cool shit here. So stay tuned. Tell your friends about it. Subscribe. Turn on notifications for all the live videos that I do. And I'm excited, and I promise you, cool shit is coming. So yeah, that's all I got to say. Appreciate the love. I'm out of here.